It is a novella. It's a very short book. In fact, it's a series of short books that he has written post the era where he has been reinvented himself as a Christian.
Oh.
He as you know, we all know about Tolstoy and his life and how he became a reborn Christian and how about that period his book sort of like manifest into something different, into a different theme, to different symbolism. So in the beginning, Leo Tolstoy was born about 1830, and he passed away about 1910, just before the First World War passed away. And as you know, that he is one of the greatest realists, novelists, classical realist writers there is. One other that comes close probably might be his predecessor, which is, I would say, Dostoevsky, and perhaps Dickens in a way, because both of them are in that realist kind of style of writing. Tolstoy was born from an aristocratic family. His father was a count, a large aristocratic landowner with a very long history. His ancestors was one of those that was very close to Peter the Great. By that, he was conferred large tract of lands, and at the same time he became count. So he was the third son from the family of count. So under him, where he was born, Pollyanna something, where the land of his ancestors is there. He had a lot of serfs under him. So he is what do you want to say? Somebody who was not destitute in his life. He wasn't really impoverished. He wasn't really suffering. He wasn't one of those suffering writers like the form like Dostoevsky is. But nonetheless, he was a very critical writer. Critical in the sense that a lot of the things that happened around him, he did not agree. He was a pacifist, not because of any other reason, because he himself was involved in a war, in the Crimea War in 1800, and he has seen all the agony, all the suffering of what war produced. So thereafter he intended to be a pacifist, and thereafter he became such a staunch proponent of pacifism that others follow him. He was basically one of those that actually propound pacifism as a movement, as an important movement. But his progression into he had two parts in his life. One was in his early life, where as a young man he studied, I think, law, but in his heart he always have literature in him, and he has always have a voice that he need to be said. Therefore, he abandoned his law career and he involved himself into writing. So at about 1870, or that period, 1870, certainly after 1888, because thereafter all the short stories that came after 1888 is all war. You can see he changed. His style of writing changes. So he was more ethical, he was more moralistic, he was more about Christianity, moralism, and he was also at that point quite anti-establishment. He was anti-state. He was not actually proponent of any activistic movement, but he abhorred the state, he abhorred the system that the state provides, and he could see the suffering of the people under certain ruling. So he was in a way not really much of a. He disliked the way the Tsar was ruling Russia. Not any specific Tsar, but Tsar in general. So he got into trouble because of those. Because at the point where this was way before communism, where voices in Russia was still in a way curtailed, but in the form of the Tsarist form of government. So those who talk against the Tsar, about the oppression that the Tsar seemed to pronounce, they will be tracked down, they will be captured by secret police, just as communism had. In fact, the communism system of totalitarianism, which is basically what we have learned from the Tsar, it was not really a thing. It was the Tsar had done it, so it's not. The transition wasn't that pronounced to the people of Russia. So one thing interesting about Tolstoy is that he was a pacifist, and he, among other things, he disliked the system of taxation of lands that was imposed by the government. He had his own way of taxation, of giving back to the serf. He disliked the idea of ownership of land, which of course, if you see it, that's what socialism government is. You cannot have an individual ownership, but you can have a communal ownership. He practiced that way before, and the way he practices it, his bent is towards Christianity, in a way that he was a Christian, a staunch Christian, but insofar as he said he was a Christian in spirit but not in church. He abhorred the established irony, the established church, what action of the established church. He is not into that. He is more of a in spirit. More specifically, that he was very much influenced by Sermon on the Mount. Sermon on that 5 chapter in Sermon on the Mount. He got influenced by that. In fact, all his, if you remember his opinions or whatever reaction he had that flows through his book, it revolves around that Sermon on the Mount. So that is his trust, all his ideas, Christianity. Okay. Then he established a commune. He established school for the underprivileged children of his property, and he wrote syllabus. He himself wrote the syllabus of the school for the serf, and he had, I think, about 12 schools under him where he runs. But that actually did not go well with the established government, so he had to stop. But his writing went on, and the thrust of his writing is basically the reflection of his ideas. And he was a great proponent of pacifism. Pessimism is pacifist. You're basically you're resisting non-violently. in which his writing was greatly influenced by Gandhi. Gandhi in fact wrote him a letter in 1910. In a way, the pessimism that he propounded was much based on the Indian Buddhism school, because he read. I mean, he is greatly influenced by the Buddhists. In fact, he said he wrote an old Buddhist text, Jeruval, I'm not sure what it's called. You know, Jeruval, in German. He read it in German because he can't read German. So he was influenced by pessimism in a way. Therefore, as that became his resistance. And again, because of that, he got influenced by many philosophers. One of which was Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer was, is one of those German realist philosophers that propound the idea of Buddhism, mystic Buddhism. So one of his books that actually influenced him was called The Power of Will by Schopenhauer, which I have read. And that book tells us about the idea of the will as an objective reality and as opposed to subjective reality, and just as the fact, the idea, the term phenomena and phenomena. That's but I'm not going to dive into that. That's too long. But okay. So that's him. So when he wrote Death of Ivan Illyich in 1882 or 1883. That is when after he has gotten his new revelation of Christianity. So, but this book is quite interesting. It is a short book, but it's pregnant with symbolism and it's pregnant with themes. And we can, as we go through, I will go through the question and we will discuss together about the theme, the intent of the author, regarding the book. Okay, first, I did not print the question, but I will look into my handbook. Firstly, I think for the first question I would like to throw to everybody is, how do you like the book? What is your opinion about the book? For those who have read, I'm sure you have an opinion about it. So anyone? Just any opinion. Is it too short? Is it too long? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give it the mic.
Oh, I'm supposed to give the mic. Okay.
Yeah, because I think we're supposed to have 2 mics.
Yeah, correct.
I think I really like this book, and I'm glad that we're doing it today on the month of Ramadan, where we should be reflecting on our life and the meaning of death. And I'm really glad that you're going to discuss all this later. I'm glad it is also short because it's quite depressing. So yeah, back to you, Amir.
Okay, you can get in one sense that it was depressing, but it's not really depressing, but it's a realist novel. It's about life. Life is as much as it's joyful, it's also depressing. Okay, anybody else have any opinion?
Right.
Yes, sir.
I came across Leo Tolstoy not to this book, but because of when we did Sylvia Path, I was looking at authors who had either gone through depression or suffered through suicidal tendencies, and then I came across Tolstoy because he had actually gone through some depression, and then he found some enlightenment. When he found religion. See. And the book that you are mentioning is actually, he also read Tirukkural. Those of you who are in Tamil will know that Tirukkural was written in German by this guy, I can never get his name right, and he read that as well. And that was an influence for Gandhi, because Gandhi actually took from Tolstoy, as you mentioned. Coming back to the book, it's actually a moral outlook on death. But to me, it was interesting because maybe because I'm 70, you know. So I look at death very differently from you young guys, you know, you're much younger to me. So I was asking myself this question, you know. Illyich went through this particular process where because he had a terminal illness, he was facing death. What would have happened if he had been cured and come out of it? That was my other question. You know, if he had cured and come out of it, would he have changed his entire lifestyle? Because the original lifestyle that he was thinking about when he was in bed was all false, you know, and would he have, you know, that was bugging me. You know, how do you answer that question? You see? No. Because he's about, I would assume he's around the 40s, you know, around that, you know, around that. And around 40s, you know, it's quite a challenge to face death, you know, at 40 years, you know, things are all going around for you. Tolstoy was 82 when he died. So he was already been through everything and then he got through that. But I enjoyed some of the, you know, I think I enjoyed the analogies he brings in, you know, his serf, Gerasim, right? To me it was an analogy because, you know, we normally fall in somebody's feet to ask for forgiveness. And if you read the book, he's actually holding his feet, you know, I mean, the guy just for him to feel comfortable. So I found a little bit of an analogy there where, you know, Ivan is now, okay, you know, the serf is holding the feet. And I think he's like this, I look at it like his alter ego. Because when he's looking at Gerisman, the guy faces death easily, he's got no worries, he's not at all bothered about dying. Whereas here I am, you know, with a wife and so if you go through all the other questions, this is just a summary of it, you know. And I always ask myself at the end of it, you know, how do you live correctly? I think we should discuss that.
Yeah.
Because that was the most thing that was bugging him, you know, that he didn't live correctly. Are we all living correctly now? I wouldn't know. So the question. Thank you.
That's very because there's two questions. In fact, there's a question about relative and about how we live.
Me or?
I didn't finish the book, but I can kind of sum up. It's a very interesting book. It's a reflection of one's life. And when I was reading this book, I asked myself, all this while, have I been leading a truthful life? Am I honest to myself? Am I there just to please others? I think there are a lot of messages in this book that kind of makes you reflect about your life. And you know, our material values is what that makes your self-esteem. That's what you use to build your self-esteem. And at the end of the day, when all those things are taken away, what are you? So that's what that came in my mind while I was reading this book. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I like the fact that it captured that particular moment in between living and dying. So that was to me like, you know, you could make a story out of it, and I thought that was very poignant on his part. And I didn't know that he was a realist, and I think it is much more real that was why it was captured. It makes me reflect on my life as well, and I think it is a much more depressing book than Sylvia Plath. You know? It is. I mean, it's morbid and it's depressing, not in a way that it's depressing because it confronts your very own fear, your very own you know, and that particular line when the daughter and the wife came into the room and they just wanted quickly to go to the theater, and I think the author said something along the line of death and sickness are the things that interfere with your happiness. So you kind of like push those things at the back of your head. You do not want to confront it, and I thought that was the one that speaks to me, because I think, you know, I do not want to think of death as something near in the near future, but you know, it's the reality. That's the reality of it. Yeah. Anyone else?
very much. I actually read it twice because it's really good. So it seems to be sort of in 3 parts. So the beginning is other people's reaction to the person they've known dying, and how people react to a funeral. In the second part, it's Ivan telling, the narrator telling about Ivan's life, so the life of the person, and then the last bit about Ivan himself telling about his process of dying. And I liked all 3 parts. They're all extremely realistic. I guess we've all felt that way about attending a funeral, I think, sometimes. I also liked the bit where, and this was also from the Soviet Plath book as well, where they talk a lot about, the protagonist is talking about doctors and his reaction to doctors, and in this one as well. And yeah, I think it's very important for doctors to read both, because it tells us how the person wants us to be to them, I guess. So I think it's a really good book for anyone to read, because it tells us how to die, and it tells us how to behave to the person who's dying and what the poor little person needs.
Yes, thank you. Basically, most of you have summed up basically the second question, which is regarding the theme of the book. The overall theme of the book. Yes, it is true. It is about life, and it's also more importantly it's about death. In fact, the title is the death of. The hint of the theme of the book is already in the title. Just as you remember, last month when we did one day in the life of Ivan Denisovich. Yes, that's the theme is in the title. The book has a rather pessimistic, because you're talking about death. So it's a very pessimistic theme, as opposed to the life of Ivan Denisovich was a bit optimistic, because he goes through his life and he survived, and he only has to wait for another day. So in this, but in regard of this book, there is a finality. There's no more tomorrow anymore. So the process, the story is about the process of us, of him and the people around him, how they face and how they treat this phenomena which we call death. And from the very beginning, for the first chapter, it's already full of the overall theme. It's already packed in the first chapter. The first chapter already hint a lot of what's going to happen. For instance, that you can remember that he talks about in the first chapter is one of the things is how you treat, how death to certain people is manifest differently. You can see that the people around him, his fellow colleagues, which he jests. When he was death, he was jesting about, and even like to them, death is something, is doorway to a promotion.
Promotion, yeah, that's right. Exactly. No opportunity.
Yes. So it just tells us our own self and how much we feel closeness, the closeness to this phenomena called death. Some people feel it's so apparent that it's real. In fact, death is the most real thing ever. It's as real as life itself. Everybody will face it. But the thing is, it's very interesting to see that the position of the characters defines how they look about death. Because these people that are around him were young people, possibly the judges, the young judges. And they look to death not as something to reflect, not to something as to frown upon, but as something as an opportunity. Because to them, life is still full. they have not fallen into that, certain, I'm sure Aru and I are in the same position that we know that our life in the future is less. The journey is going to short. The journey that was behind us is longer than what's going to be in front of us. Those realizations it's not apparent to the people that have that kind of mentality. Oh, I'm going to get promoted, this is on that. So that is one instance of how you would outlook upon that. And what is important here is that one of the points that he made is regarding the how in the first chapter was a reflection. It's the opening. The Tolstoy already tell us what the finality is, but the story is after that. So the beginning is actually the door to the whole journey, the journey that took 30 years. The story is not just the last 12 days of his life. It's actually 30 years from the beginning after that. Yes.
That's why I think that the book doesn't really. I mean, yes, of course he talks about death, but I think maybe equally important is about the life itself. Even on his deathbed, I think he was still thinking about his life. So I think it is also the life and death of Ivan Illyich should be there.
I think, I think I may repeat myself, but you see, the thing is because he's only in his 40s, so for him death was not a finality yet, But I look at it, something else that is interesting to me was he had the opportunity actually to reflect before he dies. A lot of people will never have that opportunity. You either get knocked down or you get a heart attack and you just go. See? So he actually, Tolstoy has given us that if you have the opportunity, I'm getting the message is, you better reflect now. Whether you're sick or you're not sick is okay, but it is best to reflect when you still have the time. Because it may just come and you tomorrow. And if you read the other books that I'm reading like the Japanese War and the Death Railway, you see all the guys are just dying by the hundreds every day. How many of them would have had the opportunity that Ivan had to reflect? That's my take on this. Sorry.
Okay. I guess another hint that you can see from chapter 1 is that lays the whole narrative of the book is, you remember when he was Peter went to the funeral and he was looking at Ivan's body, the corpse, and you can see that from there he had an epiphany of what death. And he saw that in the face of
The nose.
yes, you see in the face of Ivan there is some sort of joy, happiness, but at the same time there's some sort of troublesome gesture in his face. Both. So that troublesome is a hint of what's going to happen in the preceding chapter. That he suffers. So that the impression of the corpse of Ivan actually outlives the whole theme of the story, that he suffers. But the reason of his suffering before his death is manifold, and there's a question regarding it, but we will go to the next question. Right straight to the character. In fact, it's about the wife. Is it? I know, or you want to talk about the wife? Okay, but okay. This is, if you remember, the last part of in the few moments on the deathbed before he died, he had a final reflection that that he looked into the face of his wife, he looks into the face of the children, and he said, "Oh, what have I done to them?"
Doctor.
Suddenly he is succumbed with this selfless,
Yeah.
not selfish feeling. Oh, what have I done for myself? But I don't know. I have no experience of that. And the last moment, while we were sleeping away, we do not know whether that is actually our last thoughts. What have I done to our children? Or do we sleep away being very selfish? I'm going to die. Who I care? What do I care about those who live? I don't know. So that's the question that I want to ask each one of you. Your thoughts. What will your final thoughts be, possibly, on that final day? It is a very, very I mean, it's not even a question and answer based on reality, because none of us have experience.
Yeah.
So I want you to just throw a thought regarding your final moments. What will it be? What will your final thought be?
Actually, I wrote a poem about this. You don't mind if I read it out? Let me get it out from my
Yeah, okay.
Okay, we're gonna have a poem. Free admission to poem reading. Okay, that's the thing. What will be our final reflection? Because I thought at that last moment we will be selfish. I don't know, but this is a question that has no right answer.
No right answer.
No right answer.
Each one of us have one. You gonna play the piano too? No. No. It's just
Yeah.
Okay. I just wrote it and said no tears.
Okay.
If I die, no tears, no one should cry. I want all those eyes to be totally dry. For I have lived a life, followed my heart, my choices made, now I must gladly depart. If I die, no tears, no one should cry. I have been a simple and ordinary guy, had my life filled with immense treasure from the family of friends who gave me pleasure. If I die, no tears, no one should cry. My life was on the high. I had a life that all the relief, protected, never allowed into perpetual grief. If I die, no tears, no one should cry. Done everything, no remorse, nothing to try. Helped some who had gone sadly adrift onto a better path, prevented that rift. If I die, no tears, no one should cry. Give me a salute as my body does pass by. I leave behind no debts, did my very best. My work all done, now let me forever rest. If I die, no tears, no one should cry. With smiles and cheers, wish me goodbye. Say the chance, gleefully my soul would fly. Let it float away to that place in the sky. If I die, no tears, no one should cry. What good I did, appreciate with an eye. If I had hurt you, forgive me with grace. Any retributions I will seek at the Creator's place. If I die, no tears, no one should cry. Another life I will not ever want to buy. Friends and families, the best, ask for nothing more. On my final journey, forgiveness to my deadliest foe. If I die, no tears, no one should cry. I was not perfect, I was human, that's why. For all who are here, you may be but a few. Then again, only you matter, the ones totally true. Just kindled me to write that.
You actually answered the whole thing question.